All right, today we'll break down Codies Sanchez's video about buying a house in 2026. Now, as always, we will analyze the video from the holistic perspective of building wealth, not from a lens of real estate, stocks, insurance, or building a business, but from a lens of holistic wealth. And listen, guys, wealth doesn't discriminate. If it makes money, who am I to say that it's not the best way? So anyways, the first thing I do when I analyze the video is go straight to the end. And that tells me immediately the bias and the intention of this video. So at the end of the video, you'll see Codie prompting you to go on Discount. Why? Well, she owns it. Then she encourages you to build wealth through buying a business because that is what she sells. She can help you there, and of course, you have to pay. So she makes money. Now, I'm not saying any of this to say that what she's doing is wrong. I actually love what she's doing. She's pretty dang good at what she does. However, this already tells me, before I even watch the video, she will give us numerous reasons not to buy a house and buy a business instead. Right off the bat, I already know the structure of this video, and I'm a little bit more skeptical than I would normally be, okay? So without further ado, now let's get into the meat and potatoes, okay?
In 2025, more senior citizens are buying homes than Gen Z and millennials combined. So while you were taught that if you got the job, kept your head down, saved 10%, we'd get the keys, that playbook is not just outdated, it's dangerous.
Now, this is absolutely true that older people tend to buy more real estate compared to young folks. Young folks have been priced out of the real estate market and all the benefits that it provides. However, this has generally been true throughout history. Older people pretty much always have greater capacity to buy bigger assets. Duh! They've been in the game for longer. They have accumulated savings. They've got promoted. Their salaries went up. They repay their primary residence debt. So now they can tap into the equity of the house. In other words, older people have assets they can leverage and younger people do not. And I've been seeing this a lot lately, actually. People are almost trying to sell this idea of old versus young, right? The older people have more stuff, more wealth, and more opportunity. And yeah, they do. Think about it. Why would you rather pay $100K to someone who's been in the industry for 20 years versus someone who just read some books and drank some booze in college? It's very natural. What would be unnatural is 20-year-olds having massive amounts of wealth while 50 to 70-year-olds running around trying to get an entry-level job position with mortgage debt and consumer credit debt waiting on them.
The American dream we were sold, it was a marketing campaign built by banks, pushed by politicians, backed by mortgage brokers, and it was brilliant because if everyone believes the finish line is a home, you've just created 330 million predictable customers. So you pay the mortgage, you get the insurance, you fix the roof, you upgrade the kitchen, die with equity. Meanwhile, the wealthy, they don't play that game. And at this point, somebody always goes like, but Codie, the price always goes up. Does it? If that was true, why don't billionaires only put money in houses since prices only go up? That's absurd. Of course they don't. Everyday consumers, we just see the prices go up, but beneath the surface, there's a lot that you'll never see. An AEI housing analysis shows cheap loans inflate prices. How does that work? Well, builders like Lennar, they inflate prices through what's called concessions to builders, which basically means real estate insiders use a bunch of tricks to make housing pricing numbers look like they always go up. They give 2 months free. They do what's called mortgage rate buy downs. I think Ramit Sethi said it perfectly. In real estate, I think you should consider yourself the sucker in the casino and find every possible angle for how you're being taken advantage of, because there are multiple sophisticated parties who want your money and are very good at convincing you to give it to them.
Okay, so it's a lot to unpack here. First, yes, the American dream is a marketing campaign. And yes, the housing industry is massive. and by far the biggest consumer sector in the consumer economy. And obviously, a lot of people make money here. And yes, there are strategies that companies use to prop up home prices. But I'm still not seeing how is that hurting homeowners. I do not know anyone who is complaining about their house going up in value. Oh, how terrible. My equity just doubled because of some shady tricks done by some lender who inflated our neighborhood's value. Said no one ever. Sure, it's not good for buyers for affordability reasons, but that is a big reason why you would want to be an owner, so you can participate and experience this appreciation, not to complain about it. If anything, that is a reason to be in the housing market, not other way around.
At this point, people usually go like, but Cody, my house price went up. Okay, let's play that out. You bought a house. It's a good investment. Good job. Value increased $300,000? Well, so how do you get that money out? Do you sell and move to another house? They're all more expensive now. Do you move to a new city? I guess, but your job, your business, your friends and family, all right here. Remember, rent is capped at a maximum, but home ownership also has all these hidden costs.
Well, again, I'm not sure exactly the point she's trying to make. Home appreciation has nothing to do with the home ownership costs. One is a cash flow item, the other is a value component. Yes, home ownership costs can be substantial and fluctuates. Insurance fluctuates, taxes fluctuate as the home value changes. The house requires maintenance and repairs, and there are HOA payments, which are all hidden costs of home ownership. However, let's see it through a wealth management lens, okay? Rent is an expense, while home ownership fulfills two functions for you. It's a place to live, and it's also a hidden passive savings mechanism. Every mortgage payment increases your equity in the house. Yes, you do pay interest, which is a pure profit for the lender, but your rent is a pure profit for your landlord. So from your perspective, mortgage is a way more beneficial because part of your cost is actually going into a savings bucket versus rent, where 100% of that payment is an expense for you. Additionally, your rent is not capped, but your mortgage is. That $2,000 or whatever mortgage you're paying is going to be exactly the same for the next 15 years or 30 years. Can you say the same about your rent? No. So her illustration actually makes absolutely no sense. It's actually reversed, and the mortgage has a cap and rent doesn't. And the last point I'll make to this, mortgage payments are not forever while rent is. There's no universe in which you will occupy the unit and don't pay rent. But the mortgage goes away the second you pay it off. All in all, from a wealth building perspective, home ownership is almost always more advantageous in the long run. And by the way, guess how these old people can afford buying homes right now? They use assets they have accumulated throughout years. And the house is one of those assets. Now, I can already hear some dorky nerd sitting there and telling me how he can pay rent and leverage the savings to his revolutionary drop shipping business idea, or in the stock market, or whatever the other thing. First, let's compare apples to apples. Owning a home is a very passive, no skill required type of wealth builder, okay? It's like a savings account with appreciation potential. Do not compare it to active business endeavors. And the second, by the way, if you're a dork enough to even suggest that, then I'm sure you can fucking nerd your way into financing your revolutionary business idea. Dork. All right, let's move on.
Part 3, real estate as investment. Let's get real here. Let's look at long-term performance of the house versus the stock market. So a stock beat owning a house by over 3x over the last 20 years. If you put 100K into the stock market instead of into home equity, you would have more like 350 to 450K as opposed to 200K today. And in some periods, much more than that. And that's just the math.
Now, in her example, she compares the median cost of a house versus the S&P 500 price appreciation over the same period of time. That is a very simplified and kind of lousy example, I would say. First and foremost, $100,000 investment in the housing buys you $1 million property versus $100K investment in the stock market buys you $100,000 worth of S&P 500. Why does that matter, right? Well, let's say your property goes up in value by 3% during the first year, okay? Your return is not 3%. Your property appreciated by $30,000. Your mortgage is fixed, meaning that all this appreciation accrues to your equity position. You invested $100,000. So the reality is that this year, your return was actually 30%, plus the cash flow, plus your tenants bought you more equity, plus the tax benefits. Now, on the other hand, S&P 500 price return is not the total return. Her example should have included dividends you would be receiving throughout all these years. That would be a total return. So the comparison is quite off, to be quite honest.
A lot of people at this point go like, Codie, I want to own a rental property. Like, okay, fine. Let's break this down. Let's say you save up for a rental property. The average price in the US is around $400,000. So you close the deal, you rent it out, and after the mortgage, maintenance, taxes, and tenant calls about leaky faucets, you're bringing in $200 a month in net income. That is $2,400 a year for $400,000 in what's called capital risk. That is a 0.6% return. You'd make more money in a savings account, and a savings account won't have to have a last-minute roof replaced, and then dealing with 5 renters and a broken water heater.
Again, this math example is extremely off. The return is not 0.6% because the return in the real estate game comes from 4 sources. She only picked one source and conveniently left the other 3 behind. Cash flow is just one source of return. Property appreciation is another source of return. Your tenants pay rent that you use to pay down your debt, which builds up your equity position in the property. That is your third source of return. Also, let's not forget tax benefits that provide another source of return. From a wealth management perspective, we always look at after-tax returns and not the pre-tax returns. And in the higher levels of wealth, tax savings could easily add up to 3 to 5% to your total return. Therefore, in the wealth management space, we focus on taxes a lot, actually. So again, just a lousy and incomplete example, kind of biased towards deterring people from participating in the real estate game.
Now, part 5, the risk most people never take. Most people are terrified of taking the wrong risk. But here's the truth. They're playing defense while their life runs out on the clock. Bill Perkins said it perfectly. The biggest risk most people take is not taking enough risk for the life they want. So what did wealthy people do? They stack the deck. They don't gamble. They negotiate terms. They structure upside. They engineer the outcome, and you can do the same. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, send them this video.
She is absolutely right here. Wealthy people always engineer outcomes. This is quite literally what wealth management is. I enjoy being in this space because what we do is no different than planning a party or planning a vacation. You don't just show up at the airport and hope and pray it will take you to Europe, or book your hotel and reserve restaurants and provide you with the transportation. Same with wealth management. You match your needs and objectives with vehicles and products that help you to accomplish them. I always say that hoping to stumble across wealth is like trying to buy milk at Home Depot. Ain't happening.
Strategy 2 is called seller financing. And seller financing is how I buy most businesses, but you can buy houses that way too. You find a distressed seller, you offer to buy their house over time with small down payments and monthly installments. No banks, no mortgage, just you, the seller, and a win-win contract. Let's explain this in detail. Seller financing is when the seller becomes the bank. Instead of you borrowing money from Wells Fargo or Chase, you borrow from the person who owns the house. So it looks like this. Homeowner gives you the money for you to buy their house. Over time, you pay the homeowner back the house as you get income. Instead of usually the money comes from the what? Bank. We're going to replace the bank with the owner. Now, you still make a down payment, pay interest, pay monthly payments, sign a promissory note, have the house as collateral, but the seller gets the monthly checks instead of the bank. Now, why would anyone do this? Seller financing helps two types of people. Buyers, because it's going to help you with a lower down payment and easier approval, no underwriting. They're going to have faster closing, more flexible terms. Then it helps sellers because they actually get something really valuable, which is interest. So they keep earning on the house as you pay the mortgage. This also allows them to sell the house faster. And you avoid a lot of listing hassles, which could be additional money. In addition, there's tons of tax benefits by spreading income over years, which means maybe you pay less money to the IRS, which everybody is into.
Now, she talks about seller financing from a buyer's perspective, since her whole business is all about helping others to buy businesses, right? But from a wealth management perspective, what I'm interested in is seller financing from a seller's perspective. And by the way, if you understand the benefits to the seller, it will also help you as a buyer in the negotiation process. So first and foremost, the big question when you sell an asset is what to do with the money, right? Because you didn't just sell the asset to buy a car or something else, clothing. Typically, the seller wants to reposition their money because of some life event, right? In many cases, a person will sell their business because they're trying to retire and they want to reduce the risk and operational involvement in the day-to-day operations. So seller financing allows the seller to sell the asset while simultaneously still having it produce an income in the form of interest. And another big issue for the seller is taxes. As I always preach, sales means taxes, so think outside the sale. And the seller financing spreads out the sale proceeds and as a result lowers your taxes. Also, deferring the tax gives you time to think and plan on how are you going to reduce this liability in the future. Taxes are not set in stone, guys. There are numerous ways to lower them. You just need to know how and plan for it. Don't just blindly pay. Additionally, the tax bill dollar amount is fixed. Therefore, this debt gets inflated away over time. Think about it like that. To pay $2,000 in taxes today is much more expensive compared to paying $2,000 in taxes in 15 years. This is called time value of money, and it always works in the favor of the borrower. And banks typically know that, so they charge an interest rate to protect themselves, but the government doesn't. So it is beneficial to defer this liability as much as possible. Another thing to understand is that people forget that capital gains tax is determined using your income. It's a progressive tax system in which more you make, the more you pay in taxes. So spreading it over multiple years allows you to keep your income low, and therefore capital gains tax rate is lower as well. Not to mention that high capital gain can also trigger a net investment income tax, which is an additional 3.8% tax. All in all, guys, I enjoy watching this video. I like Codie's content, and I honestly watch it regularly. However, the main goal was to take you through the lens of wealth management and not through the lens of a young hustler who's young, hungry, and wants to take a lot of risk. Buying businesses can definitely play a huge part in your overall wealth building journey, but you have to take a 360-degree view, and that is exactly what wealth management lens helps you to accomplish. So thank you so much for watching. As always, please hit that like and subscribe button, and make sure you leave a comment if you have any suggestions or other comments on how can I improve the content and make it work better for you.